Hey guys, what's going on? Jeb here, and in today's video, we're going to be doing some longer-term technical analysis on Bitcoin because in today's video, I want to discuss the concept of Bitcoin's strength and discuss whether or not Bitcoin is actually getting stronger. Because I've heard a lot of people talking about how Bitcoin might be getting stronger here ever since we fell back below $6,000 over here in November of 2018, and we've been trading sideways around $3,000 to $4,000 ever since then. So in this video, I want to discuss whether or not Bitcoin is actually gaining strength, gaining bullish momentum, getting stronger, moving on here into the end of 2019, moving on through 2019, and whether or not Bitcoin is actually looking more healthy now than it did back in December of 2018. Now, that seems a little like a weird question. Of course, it's better, but we'll be discussing that in today's video. So if you guys enjoyed today's video, definitely consider dropping a like, hitting that subscribe button, and smashing that notification bell. So without much further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. By the way, guys, as you can probably see on our colorful little chart here, I've gone ahead and started recoloring my support and resistance lines. The blue lines are support and the red lines are resistance. That'll make it a little easier to read our charts. Tell me what you think about that in the comment section down below. Anyway, Bitcoin is currently trading at around $3,990. We'll do a bit of short-term TA here at the outset of the video to get to the bottom of what is going on here, because in yesterday's video, I was discussing this consolidation pattern that Bitcoin was in. It had broken out, and I recorded that video right there. Right there. It was on this candlestick, that one right there. Bitcoin was just about to fall off a cliff, and funnily enough, about 30 minutes after I recorded that video, it was on this candlestick right here, that one right there. Right after I recorded that, I said in that video that Bitcoin was breaking bullish, but it probably wasn't going to continue. It was probably going to fall over and come down here and at least test this uptrend of support where it very well may find support. And lo and behold, literally before I could finish making the thumbnail for that video, that's exactly what had happened. And Bitcoin fell off the metaphorical cliff. It had the blood fall, you know, all those euphemisms I say about crashes. Bitcoin fell quite substantially here, all the way down close to $3,900 before bouncing rather strongly and moving back up here. So Bitcoin is still in this rising wedge. Bitcoin is still in this ascending triangle here. Bitcoin is still moving to the upside, but we did see a major sell-off because Bitcoin has been bouncing around in this wedge right here. We've seen Bitcoin bounce around quite a bit. We've come up here, tested levels of resistance, support, resistance, support, resistance, resistance, support, etc., etc., etc. Bitcoin's getting closer to the end of this, and Bitcoin is eventually going to break either bullish or bearish out of this, and it's really a matter of time to see which way Bitcoin is going to indeed break. And as I've talked about in previous videos, I think it's going to be bearish because, as you can see in the chart that has been that I've added a couple levels of resistance to that I wanted you guys to see, and I've also gone ahead and color coded them so it's a little easier to see them. There is quite a bit of resistance right above us. As we know, there is that longer term downtrending level of resistance, that being the one from the 2018 bear market. Once my chart loads right here, this one right here is giving us resistance really relatively soon. Now we can draw this in multiple different ways. We can draw it out here, something like this, and it's still going to be accurate, but we do see that that is giving us kind of a zone of resistance. It's harder to draw a zone of resistance on a diagonal like that, but we are looking at kind of a zone of resistance for that, somewhere like right through here. It's going to be hard for Bitcoin to push through that and then break out on top of that, so that's probably going to help us fall over for one. The second thing that I really want to touch on in this video, and one of the main reasons I'm making this video, is because of this zone of resistance up here that I haven't given a whole lot of credit in the last couple of months. This zone of resistance is very important, and of course I've noticed it, but I haven't talked about it a whole lot, and there's not really a good reason for that. I've just been doing other things, but this zone of resistance is very, very important to Bitcoin because, as we can see, ever since Bitcoin fell below $6,000, there has been a level, or a range of levels, you might say, that Bitcoin has refused to get above, and that starts right around $4,000. You could really say that this level of resistance is starting at about $4,000. You could easily say that, but I like to draw the zone just a little bit higher than that. Bitcoin has come up here and run into this zone of resistance over and over again, once, twice, 3 times almost, come down once again, and now we've come up here and tried to get up to $4,000 and not been able to. Bitcoin has been getting resistance in between the levels of $4,000 and $4,500 quite consistently here for the last several months, and Bitcoin hasn't been able to break it. $4,000 is obviously a major psychological level that Bitcoin needs to get through if it wants to continue moving to the upside and maybe start a bull market. But Bitcoin hasn't managed to do that yet. Every time Bitcoin comes up here to this level of right around $4,000 or a little bit higher, up here in this zone somewhere, we see that Bitcoin is not able to even get up to it sometimes, or isn't even able to get through it. Bitcoin comes above $4,000 and doesn't stay there for long. We like having a 3 in front of the price action for whatever reason for the last several months here. Bitcoin just hasn't been able to do that. And that's one of the things I want to point out here in today's video is that just because Bitcoin has been looking rather strong here over the last couple of weeks, since the beginning of February or so, Bitcoin has been trending to the upside. Bitcoin on a slightly longer term time scale, ever since we broke below $6,000, Bitcoin has not been getting stronger. In fact, Bitcoin's been getting weaker. We've had lower highs right here. We had the higher high up here, a lower high, ever so slightly higher high, but we were up there for like 8 hours. That barely counts. And then a lower high at the moment. Bitcoin is not necessarily on a technical level. Now, there's a very big difference between the technicals and the fundamentals, but on a technical level, Bitcoin is not getting stronger. Bitcoin is actually getting weaker. And one of the ways that you can see that is in the momentum for Bitcoin. Bitcoin had been moving to the upside here. And Bitcoin has been moving to the upside here, but Bitcoin is likely to see another fall over in the next couple of weeks in relation to this rising wedge right here. Bitcoin's probably going to break bearish out of this and start transitioning power back to the favor of the bears. Bitcoin's not getting stronger. And that's the thing that doesn't necessarily concern me because this is something typical of accumulation phases, especially in Bitcoin. They don't really look like they're getting stronger per se, but they are definitely important and we do want to see Bitcoin move through them. If we look over here on our BLX exchange chart, this downtrend of resistance is very analogous to the one that we were just looking at here. This red one right here looks very similar to this downtrending level of resistance right here back over in 2015. I'll go ahead and make that red so it's somewhat consistent. This downtrending level of resistance right here, I think is kind of what we're under right now. And I think we're about halfway through the accumulation phase as it sits in relation to the one in 2015. You guys know that I've drawn a lot of parallels between the 2018-2019 bear market and the 2014-2015 bear market, and one of them is this downtrending level of resistance, and I think we're somewhere right around here on our current accumulation phase. Once Bitcoin breaks above this downtrending level of resistance, once Bitcoin gets above some of those levels of resistance that I've been talking about, we go back to our chart, then we'll see. Once Bitcoin starts breaking above levels like $4,500, this downtrend of resistance, another example would be the 20 weekly exponential moving average and the 20 weekly simple moving average. Once Bitcoin is able to get above these levels and maintain its strength above these levels, Bitcoin is most likely going to start moving to the upside. But until then, Bitcoin hasn't really been garnering a whole lot of strength. Bitcoin is currently sat in between two major levels of support and resistance. It's sat between this level right here, which is the 20 weekly exponential moving average, and the 200 simple moving average out on the weekly chart right here. Bitcoin, I know the chart's a little cluttered right now. I'll go ahead and go on to another chart actually. But as you can see right here, I get rid of even these. Bitcoin is sitting in between this level right here, this one right here, this dude. That is the 20 weekly exponential moving average and the 200 weekly simple moving average. We're sat in between both of those, and that's part of the reason Bitcoin hasn't been getting a whole lot stronger, because Bitcoin can't get a whole lot stronger or it starts to go and break major levels of resistance that we're just not ready for yet. So we got to be careful about that. Anyway, guys, there are a couple more things I want to discuss here. One of them would have to do with the volume, actually. For the first time in a little while, we have CoinMarketCap up. You guys know that I haven't been looking at CoinMarketCap and doing the crypto market recap anymore because you guys didn't seem to be very interested in it anymore. But I did want to bring something up, and that is that we do have $10 billion of volume today. Now, there is a news story going around about fake volume, but I want to give that news story a little bit more time to ruminate, to marinate, and to season before I go ahead and cover it, because that is the kind of story that very well may be false. Anyway, guys, check that out on your own. There is a story going around about false volume with some of these markets right here, right over here. I'll probably link an article to that in the description down below if you want to read up more on that, but I'm not going to cover it in this video because I don't know how accurate that story is, since it is relatively recent. And I don't want to go pointing fingers at exchanges either. Anyway, as we get back over here to the chart, since we've talked about volume and since we've talked about the strength, I want to talk about what this means for Bitcoin. What does all this mean for Bitcoin? Whether or not Bitcoin is strong or not, why does that even matter? Why does it matter that Bitcoin is strong? Why does it matter that Bitcoin is potentially weak? And what does the level of $4,000 mean to Bitcoin? Well, guys, Bitcoin has been testing resistance and moving up towards $4,000 to $4,500 and testing resistance on it a lot. And that is a good sign. Bitcoin has been moving up here, testing resistance over and over and over again. We've come down here to this level of support once and twice, and Bitcoin has gone up to resistance once, twice, thrice, fourths, and fifths. We've seen Bitcoin do it 5 times or so. Bitcoin has run up here to $4,000 to $4,000 to $4,500 and tested resistance. It's done it several times. And that is a good sign, because that does mean that the Bitcoin bulls do have some strength left, and they are still trying to push Bitcoin up, and we are still trying to gain strength in the Bitcoin market. All the YouTubers seem to be relatively bullish on Bitcoin. A lot of people in the market seem to be bullish. The fundamentals are bullish. The technicals, in the long term anyway, and I mean the very long term, seem to be somewhat bullish. it does seem that Bitcoin is doing well and will be doing well for the foreseeable future. By foreseeable future, I mean the 3 months to the next 9 months or so. But in the next couple of months, we have to be wary about what's going on here, because we don't want to get overzealous and think that just because Bitcoin is moving to the upside right now and has been in an uptrend for the last couple of months, ever since the beginning of February over here, that Bitcoin is going to go ahead and start breaking resistance and moving to major levels up here around $5,000 to $6,000, because we're just not ready for that. Bitcoin's not there yet. We need to trade sideways some more. So here's what I think, guys. Here's what I think is going to happen. Eventually, this downtrending level of resistance is going to be broken, because it's such a steep downtrending level of resistance that it's going to be at like $0 sometime later on this year. So we're going to break that resistance level unless Bitcoin follows it all the way to hell. I mean, unless that happens, which is not going to happen, Bitcoin is going to break this resistance, and it's probably going to break it at the very latest sometime mid-April. That is almost certainly to happen. When Bitcoin does that, even though this is a level of resistance that people have only really started talking about in the last couple of weeks, when Bitcoin does that, it's going to be bullish for Bitcoin. Now, with all that said, what's probably going to happen here is that Bitcoin's going to break bearish out here of this ascending wedge, of this rising wedge here. It's probably going to do that in the next couple of days. It's going to break bearish, and wherever it breaks, we're going to redraw this downtrending level of resistance and see that Bitcoin got resistance on it. This is kind of like this is a really nerdy analogy, but I mean, we're doing TA here anyway. It's kind of like when you measure an electron, then you actually know where it is. It's the same thing with this downtrending level of resistance. Once we actually see where Bitcoin rejects here, then we'll go ahead and readjust this downtrending level of resistance to it, and then we'll say that that's the touch point on it, and then we'll have a much more definitive answer for where that downtrending level of resistance is. And after we break out bearish here, then we're going to obviously start moving to the downside, and from there we'll probably move down to one of our levels of resistance. Perhaps one of these down here that I've drawn in blue down here around $3,860 or $3,680 down here. I've shown in previous videos we have a ton of levels of support and resistance defining that. We'll probably come down here, set a double bottom maybe with this level of support over here, and then break bullish, and then we'll actually finally break this downtrending level of resistance. From there, it gets harder to do technical analysis because we're projecting far out into the future, but after Bitcoin breaks bullish above this downtrending level of resistance, we'll likely continue moving to the upside, and by that point, maybe we'll be strong enough to come up here, stay above $4,000, maybe even set a level of support on 4K, and start moving up through this zone of resistance right here. This zone of resistance is going to be important to be broken, and I think we're only really going to be able to definitively break it if Bitcoin is able to break some of those longer-term technicals that I've been discussing, one of them, of course, being that 20-weekly exponential moving average. You guys know I'm a big fan of that moving average, and it is in a relatively good spot for us to come and break it in the next several months. If Bitcoin can break this, then Bitcoin will be moving up through this zone of resistance, and we might be able to skyrocket right through $4,500. This level right here, this 20 exponential moving average, is a level that you want to be looking at for your technical analysis out here on the weekly chart. It's a very important zone of level of resistance. As we can see back over here, right around the time that Bitcoin broke bullish above this analogous downtrending level of resistance, we then broke bullish through that 20 exponential moving average. And while it was short-lived, Bitcoin did fall back below it. Soon thereafter, Bitcoin broke above it, and this was the start of a 3-year bull market, and it was defined by Bitcoin getting above that 20 exponential moving average. So that's really my prediction of what's going to happen here, guys. I think Bitcoin in the next couple of days is going to break bearish, but it's not end of the world 2012 level bearish. It's just a little bearish break with perhaps a 5% down, a 5% move to the downside, and it will start moving to the downside here. Probably about 5 to 10%. We'll go ahead and measure it. Right there is about 7.5%, exactly, 5 to 10%. One last thing I want to wrap the video up with is some more concrete evidence that Bitcoin is probably going to break bearish here, and that would actually have to do with the hourly chart here. If we bring up our RSI, then we're going to find that Bitcoin does have some RSI divergence. I forgot to mention this in yesterday's video. Bitcoin does have some RSI divergence. As you can see, we saw a higher high on the RSI back on the 15th of March. We see a lower high on the 20th of March right here, whereas we see a lower high on the chart and a higher high on the chart on the 20th of March. That is a bearish divergence, and that is a bearish sign for Bitcoin. And right around the time that that started to conclude, Bitcoin fell over here and moved down to test support. That is probably going to be a factor if Bitcoin breaks bearish in the next 24 to 48 hours. We could probably point to this bearish divergence as one of the causes of that. And I do think that Bitcoin, no matter what happens, is going to break bearish here. Is it possible that Bitcoin breaks bullish? Of course, guys. Of course it is. Bitcoin can always break bullish. I don't see that as being most likely based on the technical analysis that we have at our fingertips at the current moment, though. Anyway, guys, I would be very interested to hear your opinions on all of this in the comment section down below. Is Bitcoin strong right now compared to where it was a couple months ago? Do you think Bitcoin is stronger now, or do you think Bitcoin was stronger back over here in the second part of 2018? Where do you think Bitcoin has been the strongest ever since the beginning of the 2018 bear market, starting right about here? Because obviously we'd probably say right there would be the strongest. Moving on about right here forward, after we were all on board that we were in fact in a bear market and not just in some kind of correction, where do you think Bitcoin has been the strongest? I'd say one of the strongest places for Bitcoin may have actually been right over here after Bitcoin bounced from its $3,000 cliff dive from $6,000 base. Bitcoin went base jumping and took us all along with them. And I think Bitcoin was relatively strong right over here. And I do think that Bitcoin is still relatively strong. I'm speaking relatively. But at the same time, based on the way Bitcoin has been moving over the last several months, there is still some weakness in Bitcoin that Bitcoin needs to go ahead and work through so that we can start moving to the upside again and start breaking these levels of resistance, these zones of resistance, these resistance moving averages, start moving to the upside, getting some momentum under our belt, and actually being able to push forward on towards the 2020 bull market, which, as you guys know, I do believe is coming. Anyway, guys, one more thing I want to ask you to tell me about is the new colors for the zones, for the levels of support and resistance. I quite like them. It may be a little bit too colorful for me, but if it isn't, then tell me in the comment section down below. I personally like it, even though it may be a little bit much. I think I'll get used to it. Like I said, I'm interested, as always, to hear your opinions on that in the comment section down below as well. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for today's video. I do want to thank each and every single one of you for watching, as always, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.